Good afternoon, guys and girls. My name is Eric. I'm with Ocean King Marine Service. I'm a mobile service. So here today, I'm going to be doing a Yamaha F115 TXRZ. So one of the first things I like to do, I like to disconnect the fuel line coming from the boat into the primary fuel filter, and pay attention to the fuel flow. You can see right here, it goes in and out. And if you want to verify which one's which, the out is actually coming up to the fuel pump here. So I know that this is the one that I got to take off. So on this, I have the fuel line that comes in, which is right here. And I usually use fuel line zip ties to fasten them back in. So I pop the zip tie, remove the fuel line, and then I put in a fuel line with a fuel quick disconnect. Prime it up, make sure I have no fuel leaking out. Before I do anything on top of that, I go ahead and I always stabilize the fuel. This is what I use, Startron fuel treatment. 1 ounce treats 16 gallons, 4 ounces in, that's more than enough. Then I'll go ahead and reinstall the cap back in place, make sure that there's no issue. And I will take screwdrivers and make sure it's locked in pretty good. And then I'll come over to the boat and I'll give it some good shakes. Make sure that that fuel treatment gets into the fuel really good, mixes pretty good. Now, I always run anti-gel antifreeze through, even on outboards, just to ensure that no water is inside of the block or up inside the thermostat housing. I use 2 gallons of a negative 100 Starbright anti-gel antifreeze. What I do is I put a valve here from the hose so it can shut it off, because when it comes time, I just want to shut this valve off, which is on right now, but shut this valve off, and then I flip this valve, so that way there's no air introduced and it gives it every opportunity to go ahead and continue to pick up. What I also do here is on the inlet down here, where you have your water inlets screen here, and I also like to put shrink wrap tape on these holes, because I want the best chance of this picking up water. So now that I got everything set up here with the fuel, with the water, matter of fact, let me turn on that valve right there, and I'll go ahead and turn the water on. Great water pressure here, by the way, and that always is helpful. And you can see it's really pushing it out pretty good. I already have the key in the boat on the ignition. Make sure your safety lanyard's in place. And here we go. And as you can see, she's pumping pretty good with water. And I'll run it for about 15 minutes like this, make sure that the EFI kit that I use, which has engine store, fogging fluid, stabilizer in it. I do use some Marble Mystery oil and a tiny bit of 2-stroke oil. And that concoction works pretty good. It fogs them out pretty well. Okay, so my 15-minute timer just went off. She's all good and warmed up. Now this is the water in to feed the motor while she's running, and I'll go ahead and shut that off, and then I'll turn my valve on for the antifreeze anti-gel. And I'll give it a little, tilt to it, so that way it gets down in there real good. And you can see that now she's starting to pee blue out the telltale and everywhere else. And I'll use the 2 gallons. And then I'll go ahead and shut that valve off. So run for a second. I'll run back over to the ignition, shut the ignition off. And then once that's all set, I'll go ahead and pull the muffs, pull the lines, and just start disconnecting everything. The valve's closed. Make sure the valve's closed. And then I'll come back. I'll pull the tape that I got. And you see it draining down. Now, since the fuel tank fuel has been stabilized, EFI fogging kit is going through, I'll go ahead and disconnect my fuel line, and I'll go ahead and pull that out. And you'll have a little bit of fuel left in the line, and just go ahead and drain it out. Now, the next step would be, obviously, is to reconnect the boat tank fuel line and put it back on. And you can see that she's up in there pretty good. And I have these fuel line zip ties. If you can see, they have a curvature to it, so you can crank down on them pretty good. These are 8-inch, actually 50-pound zip ties, so you can put some good oomph into them. And that's what I do. And always, you know, give a little bit of space from the top of the hose. And then, yeah, that's just good and tight now. And then on the tail end here, I'll just go ahead and clip it. And she's all set with the fuel stabilized. She's fogged out. Fuel line's connected back up. I'm gonna let her sit for a minute, let the oil get back down into the oil pan really good before I go ahead and start draining the oil on this. A lot of people, what they like to do is they like to suck the fuel out, or the oil out. Me personally, I like to fully drain the system so we don't have no old oil contamination. Now, the oil drain on this one is right here. So it's a 14mm socket. Now, what you can do is lift her up, and I do this so that way when I go ahead and pull the oil drain plug, okay, all right, she's good and loose now. Ratchet off, hold the socket in place, tuck the motor back down really good. We want it down as far as it'll go because we want to catch all the oil. And if you can see, well, I hope you can see here, again, 14mm. And I really like the oil to drain good, again, because I don't want no contamination of old oil. She's definitely needed an oil change. So this is to ensure, one, come springtime, you got a nice clean oil and oil filter, and if there is any water, it's to ensure that the oil water, when it separates in the oil pan, if there is any, that it's not going to crack anything. So it's just a precautionary measure. That's why I have my catch pan down here, just to ensure that, you know, we're going to get all that oil out of there. So as you can see here, she's slowly slowing down and draining into there. So when I do the oil drain plug, I always replace the gasket for it. So I've already pulled the old one out, and the new one's on here. So now while that's doing that, I have this oil filter wrench, and there's multiple different types to go ahead and pull off oil filters. I like this one because, especially for this motor here, it fits right on like that. So you know, the plier types are a little bit difficult on there, plus we don't want to hit anything like this, especially, which is the power hit. So here we go, and you can see how nice that was. And what I'll do, yep, see, she's already wanting to. There's always going to be some residual oil left in the oil filter, so I always try to make sure that, again, I don't get oil all over the place. And I'll stuff some rags down in there so that way you can kind of catch whatever is going to come out. And yeah, you can see that she's wanting to leak out pretty good. Okay, and I'll take a nice clean rag, and I always wipe off where the filter goes, up underneath. So this oil filter is 5GH 13440 -71. Put a little bit of oil, fresh oil, not used oil, around the O-ring of the oil filter. I always make sure that I pull off the complete seal, so that way I make sure that it's not going to get inside. And just stick my finger in there and lube up the O-ring pretty good here, and you can see that she's pretty clean around there. And go ahead and install this. And don't forget, you don't need a pair of pliers or anything like that to put the oil filter on. You know, just do it hand tight. Okay, she's good and tight there now. Now that I've go ahead, remove the oil filter, and as you can see, she's dripping a little bit, but not too bad. I'm gonna go ahead and install the oil drain plug with the new gasket on it. And again, it's 14mm. And we'll go ahead and put it up in there. When doing this, you know, she's right there. She says I'm tight, but then you just take it a little bit and just give it that little bit of like a half a turn oomph. There we go. Now she's locked in pretty good. Now it's time to go ahead and fill it. And I always set the cap up here. When I fill up the engines with new oil, you know, I like to make sure, I always stuff a rag in my fuel filters, just to make sure that nothing gross is getting inside, you know, any metal or anything like that. And, you know, I'll just wipe it out really quick again. And oh, here's the oil capacity right here. You know, this one's lucky. I still got some of the stickers left, and it's a 4.5 liters, which is 4.8 quarts, so pretty close to 5 quarts. And definitely pay attention, you know, put 4 quarts in, let it sit, you know, and then what you'll do is you'll go back after maybe 10 minutes or so and just check the oil. You know, you want to fill it, you know, just because they says that's the oil capacity, and that's another reason why I like to drain it fully, because when you drain it from the oil drain plug, you know that all the oil is going to come out. And when I go to put new oil in, it's going to be pretty close to the capacity. But again, you always go by the dipstick. And I'm going to go ahead and pour this 1 gallon, 4 quarts. And this is Yamaha Lube SAE 10W30 OEM. Always OEM. I'm an OEM person. I don't use any aftermarket oil or, you know, Walmart oil. Love the fact that manufacturers have their specific oils. But now I'm going to let that sit for a little bit, and I'm going to clean up a little bit. Okay, so now this is sat for a little while with the 1 gallon of oil in there. And like I said, it takes 4.8 quarts, so we'll check the oil. And she's registering on there. So I'm going to go ahead and add, what we don't want to do is add so much oil that it's popping over the crosshatch marks. You know, anywhere from here to almost full is sufficient, because again, when you go ahead and start this motor back up and commission it in the springtime, the oil filter, since it's not primed, is going to recover or fill up and absorb some of that oil. You know, some people, what they'll do is they'll add past it, and you know, we're just going to put the recommended oil amount in there, oil capacity, which is almost 5 quarts. So I'm going to go ahead and add the 0.8 in there now. You know, 4.8. The 0.8 is almost a whole quart. So now we'll let that sit for a few minutes. You know, to get down into the oil pan. Don't overfill it. So take your time. You know, put small increments in, like, you know, 4.8 quarts. You know, I did the 4, let it sit, and then check it. You know, always go by the dipstick, you know, to ensure that you're not overfilling. And she sat for a few minutes. So if you can see, it's right at the full mark here, which is great. And the oil filter is going to take a little bit up. What I'll also do is, right off the dipstick, is I'll take a little bit of oil, and I always put it on these threads and on the O-ring. I just like to do that because they just like to get, you know, stuck, and you know, the rubber heats up a little bit and adheres to the valve cover. So we'll just put a little bit of oil on there and in the thread, so that way it's not so difficult to get off in the morning time, or not the morning time, but the next time that you go ahead and do an oil and filter change. Here is the gear case gear lube drain plug, and here is the vent. Let's see if I can, yeah, see, I can pop that one pretty good. And I'll remove this. And what I also like to do when I remove this is make sure that catch pan's underneath pretty good, and you can see it. So that gear lube looks, to me, it's pretty burnt. So that's another good thing. I didn't see any water, because usually what would happen is, if, you know, when you first go ahead and pull the gear case drain plug, you know, if there's a good amount of water in there, that's gonna be what's gonna come out first. So now I'm gonna go ahead and pull the vent plug, and as you can see now, she's really coming out, and she's pretty burnt. So make sure that when you pull your gear case drain plug is going to have a magnet, so make sure that goes on the bottom. You definitely don't want to put it in here. You have a chance of it hitting maybe a gear inside, and that would be even worse. And what I also look for is right here, it's a magnet, as you can see, and if there was like an excessive amount of metal in here, which would be gears, they would be sticking up, and that would obviously you know, raise an eyebrow and start questioning what's going on here. And it's pretty clean. And when I do my gear case, I also, obviously, best bet is to replace the gaskets. So take them off, throw them away. That way you know that you're not putting the old ones back on, and put them on and put them in place. And then they're all set and ready to go. Now I'm just gonna sit and let this drain out pretty good, and she will drain like this. And this is like the best way for it to drain, because this is where the hole is, and you know, all the oil is gonna come down, or the gear lube's gonna come down here. The Quicksilver gear lube will absorb up to 30% water and still function, and you know, help save a gear case in a sense, or give you an opportunity to go ahead and figure out what is going on. You know, if there was water inside of this gear case, which we would see immediately, and if that's the case, then, you know, we don't really want to fill it back up. You know, I would instruct the customer what's going on, and see if, you know, he wants it repaired right away, or she wants it repaired right away. And if they do, then I would pull the gear case off. But if they don't and they want to wait to spring, I would absolutely put gear lube back in to ensure that, you know, there's no condensation and you end up getting rust and so forth. And we just don't want to do that. And I would absolutely fill it back up. So now, as the gear lube is slowing down, I'm going to go ahead and bring the gear case a little bit down. So wait, yeah, bring it down. And as you can see now here, the curvature, which we're at a low point, which will allow the rest of the gear lube to drain out. I'll just let it do its thing until she's good and bone dry. So the oil change kits that you can get from us, you know, you can get them with oil and filter. You can get them with the gear case gaskets, the oil drain plug gasket, along with gear lube. And they'll come with this little hand pump. So on here, this is not a universal thread. So Yamaha, Mercury, Suzuki, Tohatsu, they all have pretty much, well, Honda and Tohatsu is the same thing, but they all have different threads. So you can also get from us a kit. It's an adapter kit. And if you can see here, I have multiples of adapters, you know, Volvo Penta, Verados, you know, outboard inboards or inboard outboards, you know, and I know that this is the one that I'm going to need. It's got the thinner threads, and I'll install that now. I don't personally use the little hand pump, which you see here. I have a 5-gallon bucket that's got gear lube that I just fill up, that's got a hand pump in it. Go ahead and install this into the adapter, because this is, again, the same size threads as that hand pump that you can get from us in the oil change kits. And I like to make sure that I'm good and tight here. Now I'll go ahead, one of the key things here is to make sure that she's pretty well level, you know, straight. So let's see, let's do it with her tucked in completely. All right, when you see, there we go. When you see this gear lube, you can see that the color is green. And this is the Quicksilver High Performance Gear Lube. Again, that's a preference, and I'm gonna fill it up and pump slow, because obviously in New England, you know, oil, gear lube, you know, anything when it starts to get cold, it gets really thick, and we don't want to blow out seals. So I just like to go really slow to ensure that I'm not gonna blow anything out. But usually this will probably take about a quart, maybe a little bit over a quart of gear lube. So I'm gonna fill this up until I start to see gear lube come out of the vent plug hole. And once that does, I'm gonna make sure that I'm gonna go up to the propeller, and I'm gonna spin the propeller just to ensure that, you know, we get any air bubbles or any air pockets. We can get them to come, you know, release to the top of the gear lube. And that's just to ensure that she's gonna be nice and full. There she comes. And you can see her leaking out now. And I'll just go ahead and finish that last pump, and I'll come over to the propeller and I'll just spin it. And it sounds pretty good, nice and smooth. And you can see some of that old gear lube that was in there that was burnt. And what I like to do is I'll come back, and I know that she's full, but I'll go ahead and slowly pump it, you know, because I want to try to flush out any of that residual gear lube that's in there. And you know, so that way it's just not contaminated. the vent drain plug. I don't see any air bubbles now, so that's a good sign too. And there we go. I went ahead and pumped it, and I'll go ahead and spin it again. Oh yeah, it sounds good. All right, so now remember, the plug with the magnet goes into the gear case. So the first thing I'm going to do is come up to the vent plug hole. And I love these screwdrivers. They're fat, they fit this screw perfectly. And there is two different sizes. And I'll just, give it a little nice hand tight and get a rag. So that way I can get a good grip, because I got gear lube all over me. Yeah, she's good and tight there. Now that she's full, I'm going to bring her back up. It's obviously a little bit easier, so you're not humped over looking up underneath on the gear case. And have your drain plug, the gear case drain plug, in hand, because once we release this, and the reason why I put the vent plug back in is obviously so it doesn't just have a free flow, and it slows down the gear lube from coming back out. And you can see as it comes out a little bit, and then I'll just go ahead and put this in place with my finger just to get it caught, the thread started. And you can see here that she started up. And get it in there good. Put the rag around it so I can get a nice good turn on it. And then what I like to do once that's done is I use an impact screwdriver, and I'll just go ahead and give it a couple whacks, because I want to make sure that she's seating really good. And here she is right here, and I'll get my nice fat come to the you can either do whichever one you want first. Make sure that it's in there pretty good, and there you go. And I give it a nice little tight, and we don't have to go crazy. Again, we don't want to strip the screw the threads out or anything like that. So yeah, that's nice and tight in there. Now, last thing we want to do is be at fault for a screw to come out of the gear case and then lose all their gear lube and then have some issues at that point. Now, since she's up, this gives me a good opportunity to go ahead and grease up my Zerk fittings. There's one here. This is the pivot steering, and I'll push quite a bit of grease through it, because I want to see the old grease come out. And if you look down here, and you could probably hear it. Oh yeah, there she comes. Just push some good amount of grease through it and get any water that's possibly trapped inside of there out. And I can see some of the new grease already. There's another grease fitting right here, or Zerk fitting. And again, we want to pump it. And if you look around this area, you can see all the new grease coming out of it. Come back to this side. This is the port side. Push some grease into there. We want to see that grease come out. If you look right here, you can actually see some water coming out. Pump it up pretty good, and then that's pretty good. Yeah. What I also like to do is right here. This is where the trim rams go. I put grease on that, and use marine grease. And I'll go ahead and put it around the seals also. This just really stops from any corrosion getting in, salt getting in, causing corrosion, and just kind of get it around there really good. And then I'll also do the tilt. I'll get it up on the rams good. So there's also going to be two up front here that I'm going to get now. There she comes. Let's go to the other side. I also like to just grease up the steering ram also. Get some grease around that seal. I mean, it's not going to hurt it. It also protects it throughout the winter.